Hey, hi friends, in this video we will develop a Spring Boot CRUD RESTful web service. So let's open Spring Initializer website to create a Spring Boot project. Here you can see we select Maven project and we choose Java language and we choose latest release of Spring Boot, and here we need to enter project metadata. Let's enter group ID as a net.java.springboot and artifact ID as a Spring Boot hyphen CRUD RESTful web services. All right, so artifact name is could be a name of the application. All right, let's keep name description as it is, and let's change package name as CRUD RESTful web service. All right, and let us keep jar as a packaging type and Java 8, and let's choose a Spring Boot web starter. We are developing RESTful application, so let's choose Spring Web Starter, and we are using DAO layer, so let's choose Spring Data JPA, and we will be using H2 database to quickly start the application. So H2 is an embedded database we can use to quickly test our application. Okay, let's generate and let's import in our Eclipse ID. Alright, so this is now we have imported this project in our Eclipse ID. Here you can see this is the default structure of Spring Initializer generated code. So this is a pom.xml, and here you can see the dependencies like this is Spring Boot JPA, and this is web, this is H2 database, and here is the test, and here is the plugin. Alright, this is the simple Maven.xml pom.xml file, and here you can see Spring Boot application annotation, and this is the entry point of Spring Boot application. And here you can see a Spring Boot application basically is a combination of three annotations like configuration, auto enable configuration, and component scan annotation. So this is the combination of three annotations. So let's create a packaging structure now. Here let's controller package, and let's create one more package. Let's give a package name as repository. Hit finish. Let's create one more package. Let's name it as a model. Here we go. So we have created a model, controller, and repository packages. Alright, so inside the model we'll create a employee entity. So this is the employee JP entity we are creating. Name it as an employee class, and create a few fields. Private long ID. Now let's create a getter setter methods to access these private fields. Go to the source, generate getter setter, select all, generate. That's it. So let's create a constructor now. Go to the source, generate constructor using fields, select all, generate. Alright, now let's generate our default constructor, deselect all, generate. So this is the simple employee Java class. Now we need to convert this Java class into a JP entity. Let's annotate employee class with the table. Alright, so let's annotate employee class using table annotation, and give the table name. Give the table name to this class as just map the table name with this employee class as employees. And here we are adding the JP annotations like ID and generate value. So we need to define a strategy here. Whether we need to use identity or we need to use auto increment. So in our case, we use auto generated strategy. Alright, let's map these fields with a column name, database table column name. Let's give it as a post underscore name. Let's copy this. Okay, and for last name field, give the column name like last underscore name, and for email id, email underscore id is so this is typically JPA entity class. Now let's create a repository, so interface. So let's name it as employee repository. Alright, let's extend to JPA repository. So JPA repository provides all the CRUD database operations, so we can extend and we can reuse the methods. Alright, let's annotate this interface with the @repository, so that Spring will auto scan this repository as a Spring component. Alright, it's time to create a REST page now. Let's go to the controller and create a class like employee controller. Alright, let's annotate this employee controller class with the REST controller. So REST controller is annotation which typically used for making the REST APIs. So REST controller is the combination of controller and response body annotation. Alright, let's inject employee repository interface into employee controller. So basically we use auto add annotation to injecting the objects. Right, so here we have injected employee repository, and we can use a method of employee repository inside in employee controller. So let's create a RESTful web services now. So let's first we create a get all employees API. Alright, so first let's map versioning here. So I give name as a API/vi, so v1. So this is these are the APIs which are related to version 1, so that is the meaning of v1. So let me list out the APIs that we are going to create in an employee controller. So first we create a employee get all employees, and create employee get employee by id, and update employee, and then finally we create a delete employee by id. Here we go. So we will be creating 5 REST APIs for employee resource. Alright, let's create a REST API for list API to get all the employees. So public list employee, we are returning list of employees, and here is the method name is get all employees. Just call find all method. So find all method returns all the employees which are there in a database table. Alright, so here we are returning list of employees. Now this is a simple method. Let's make it as a REST API by annotating with get mapping annotation. So get mapping annotation is the shortcut for request mapping annotation with request with HTTP get request. Alright, so this is the REST endpoint. Now let's create a one more API, REST API, that is create employee. Alright, so this is a simple public method. So let's call save method of employee repository. So we need to get the employee request from the client. Alright, this is a simple method. Let's make this method as a REST API by annotating with the post mapping annotation. So again, post mapping annotation is a shortcut for request mapping and post request. Alright, let's make /employees, and let's annotate this employee object as a request body. So request body annotation is used to make this employee object uh, as a so it converts a JSON into Java object. So it uses a HTTP message converters to convert JSON into a employee object. Alright, so let's create a get employee by ID API. So here just follow the steps: public response body, response entity, employee, and here type get employee by ID. Alright, okay, let's annotate this API, this method with get mapping annotation. So we are returning a employee by ID, so that's why the request method should be get method. Alright, so we need to bind URI URI value to the parameter value. So we will be using path variable annotation to bind a URI value to the method parameter. Alright, let's change it to value. Okay, so before that so we need to create actually a custom exception, that is resource not found exception. For that, let's create a package exception, and here we create a class, a resource not found exception. So if record is not found in a database, then we will be throwing this exception. Alright, okay, so here is a resource not found exception, and we are using resource status annotation to return status as a not found or 4040. Alright, now let's call the method find by ID. We are passing employee ID here. So find by ID basically returns an optional class. Okay, so optional class provides or else throw method. So basically if employee or record is not found in database, then we will be throwing resource not found exception. Alright, okay, just import resource not found exception. Okay, so let's change ID to some meaningful ID, like here we are actually using employee ID. Let's rename it. Here we go. Alright, so let's return response entity, and let's call OK method of this and pass employee in a body. That's it, and here we need to throw the exception, just add to the method parameter. Okay, here we go. We have created get employee by ID API. Alright, it's time to create update employee API now. Just format it. So we are getting employee object from the database and we are returning to the client. So let's develop update employee API. Public employee update employee. We need to annotate this method with the put mapping annotation because we are updating a resource at a server side. So typically we use put method for the to update a resource at the server side. Alright, so let's give the URL like employee/id as a path variable. Let's copy from here and just paste it. Alright, let's we need to get a employee object from the database, and we'll set all the all the required fields, and then we update these fields in the database. Alright, so basically client sends a employee JSON object and ID. Let's create a employee object that client returns. Okay, just name it as employee details and annotate this employee details with the request body so that it converts JSON into Java object using HTTP message converters. Now we got employee from the database. Now let us set all the fields that we need to update in a database. So let's set post name, and here employee dot set last name, employee details dot get last name. So basically we are need to update all the fields, so let us set all the fields. Let's set employee ID, employee details dot get employee ID. Alright, so these are the fields I need to update in a database. Let's call the save method and let us persist this employee object in a database. Now just return this updated employee object to the client. It's called OK. Let's call body method and pass the employee object to the body. That's great. Now okay, let's change the response. Okay, alright, let's create a delete employee REST API. Let's quickly create a delete employee REST API, public void delete employee, and we need to we are basically deleting employee by ID. So let's copy this path variable from here and let's annotate this method with the delete mapping annotation. Let's type the URI like employees / ID. Now this URI value will be bind to employee ID. Alright, using path variable annotation. So we are again checking whether the employee is exist in a database or not. So if employee is not exist in a database, then we need to throw the exception like resource not found exception. Alright, so let's call the delete by ID method and pass the ID. Alright, so this will delete the particular record from the database. Now we need to return something to the client saying that the resource is deleted at our server side, right? So in order to do that, let's return 200 response to the client. Alright, so this employee object is not required, so let's remove it. Okay, alright, so these are the 5 REST APIs we have developed now. It's very simple, right? So Spring Boot provides very easy strategy for developing RESTful APIs. So let us run this application. So by default this application will be deployed on embedded Tomcat server. So when we add a Spring Web Starter dependency, we'll get an embedded server. So here is the Postman REST client. I am going to test all the REST APIs now. Okay, let's form the URL. Here is the localhost 8080 API v1 and employees. So let's test the create employee API first. Let's send the request. Here we go. So basically the record is stored in a database with ID 1. So we are using S2 database. So now we'll test update API. Okay, so we are updating the resource 1, the employee object with ID 1. Okay, just change the first name and email ID and hit the send button. Here we go. the first name and email ID is updated successfully. Alright, and it also returns the status as 200. Alright, let's get that method, that API, that record from the database by using get API. Let's test the delete. Here we go, we got a 200 response, and here we go. So there is a no record exist in a database now. Alright, so let's insert a few records and test a get method, get all employees API. Alright, okay, let us insert second record. Let's create a request like first name as a Tony, last name as a Stark, tony@gmail.com. okay, hit here we go, the second record is inserted. Let's create a request for third record. Hit send, here we go. Alright, let's test all get employees. Yeah, here we go. We got a array of employee objects, right? So let us check for fourth employee object. So here we got the response. Let us test for ID 5. So we haven't found a record with ID 5 in a database, so we got a resource not found exception. So this is the typically we create a REST APIs and we test a REST APIs from the Postman client. Alright. Alright guys, I will be hosting this source code on my GitHub repository, and I will provide this GitHub repository link in the description of this YouTube video. So anytime you can check out the source code and you can refer it.